Good morning, I'm Melissa Meeks and I'm going to debrief the peer learning activity in 3 parts. These videos are designed to model how you can use a review to coach writers in revision and to coach reviewers in giving helpful feedback. In the third video, I'll help you understand what I've been doing behind the scenes to coordinate the activity. Let's start by remembering how Eli works. You completed a small bit of writing on Monday, you gave feedback on Tuesday and Wednesday, and today we're focusing on processing and debriefing feedback. Today and tomorrow, you'll build a revision plan and then revise. In a course, we could repeat these steps, building from where we ended or starting a new project. I want to put the emphasis on processing and debriefing feedback because, as Dylan Williams explains in his article, The Secret of Effective Feedback from ASCD, the only important thing about feedback is what students do with it. In debriefing, our goal is to inspire revision, to see your draft differently because of the criteria of the assignment and what you see in others' drafts. In this section of debriefing, I'm going to focus on how to coach writers in revision, and I'm going to give you 3 strategies for inspiring writers to change their drafts. The first strategy for inspiring revision is the review task itself. The writing task was simply to compose a syllabus blurb or talking points, and it had no criteria about length or about other content because participants in this course are diverse. In the review, I wanted to document the different ways people might approach the pitch for peer learning to students and to give us a sense of what's possible. Most reviews are built around criteria announced in a writing task, but this review had very few criteria, so this one is built around options. The first set of options acknowledges the purposes that we might use when we explain peer review to students. The second set covers the pedagogical principles in the readings. Because we're interested in peer learning pedagogy, we wanted to see which of these ideas are bubbling up in the ways that you're describing peer learning to your students. The third set comes from my experience working with several groups over this past year who found that students have many negative experiences with peer learning. Getting students to a more positive place with higher expectations of peer learning takes intentional conversation. So this list is about figuring out what negative ideas you're confronting. The rating scale is designed to identify which drafts groups think should be discussed in the whole class. So I'll do that in a second. The final part of the review task reinforced describe, evaluate, suggest, and provided a model which is designed to nudge reviewers in giving great feedback aligned to the criteria above. In short, the review task is a map for revision. It describes the landscape of possibilities for writers to revise. This particular review is not prescriptive. It doesn't say that writers must do X, Y, or Z to achieve a goal, though that's a good strategy for designing reviews. This review is designed to be informative and generative. It's about laying out options. The second strategy of inspiring revision relies on the zone of proximal development. Before we work through the data together, remember this image from the videos you watched on Monday? This is a little dancer who looks to the side and sees another little dancer doing the right move. So she's going to make an adjustment. And Eli, looking to your right and looking to your left and then making a slight adjustment, happens when you see your own feedback. When you receive feedback in Eli Review, you have 2 tabs, a feedback you received tab and a feedback you gave tab. The Feedback You Receive tab itemizes what reviewers think about your draft. In the trait identification checklist, you'll see a percentage of agreement among the reviewers who read your draft. Where you have 100%, both reviewers noticed that feature. Where you have less than 100%, that means one or more reviewers did not notice that particular element in your writing. So as a writer, you need to decide whether that reviewer just missed it or if that element was too subtle. Similarly, the class averages tell you of all the drafts read by all the reviewers, how many reviewers noticed each element. The class average tells you what's popular or dominant in the whole set of drafts, so you can decide how much you want to be like everyone else. In the scaled response items, you'll get both a rating and a comment if the reviewer included it. Use this feedback as food for thought. Food for thought about revision is important, but it's actions that matter most. Eli invites students to take 2 follow-through actions as they read the feedback they've received. First, you want to use the stars to rate the helpfulness of the feedback. Answer of yes, award 1 star. So look for the 3 moves reviewers were supposed to include in their comment. If the comment describes your draft or the assignment in a way that helps you understand your own goals or your message as a writer, that's 1 star. If it evaluates your progress toward the assignment goals, that's 2 stars. If it offers a suggestion, that's a 3rd star. You have 2 stars then to use at your discretion. Does it respect your work and its tone? That could be a star for kindness. Use all 5 stars only if the comment really helps you transform your work. So let me demonstrate how that star rating works. This comment is just an evaluation, so it would get 1 star. This comment begins with a description and then talks about the things that the reviewer likes, and then concludes with a question that will help the writer revise. So those are all 3 stars. The writer then can decide if a 4th star is awarded for kindness, or perhaps if this comment is truly transformative, it would get all 5. That one decision, how helpful do you find this particular comment, flows back to the reviewer and to the instructor. In a low-stakes way, without affecting anyone's grades, reviewers can use the helpfulness rating to say, "I'm getting what I need to revise from you," or not. Instructors can use that information to coach particular reviewers who are struggling to give feedback. The second decision you make as you debrief your comments is which ones are you going to add to your revision plan. On the student side, you have a button to the right of the helpfulness ratings that says Add to Revision Plan. When you click it, you choose which writing task this comment applies to, and then a copy of your comment is moved to the plan associated with that writing task. Eli's features help writers work through a decision-making process around each comment. How helpful was it? And do I want to add it to my plan? These easy choices help writers spend more time thinking through revision. The third strategy for inspiring revision is to give students a perspective of what happened across the whole class. When you're working in a review group, you can only see the draft that has been shared with you. From the instructor's vantage point, I can see what's happening across groups, and I want writers to have a full sense of what other people have been doing. I can do that by talking through the class data on the Writing Feedback tab. The trait identification checklist then lets us see what was popular across the whole set of drafts. About 35% of the drafts read by reviewers grounded peer learning in a course or department goal or in the instructor's personal pedagogy, but double that talked about the value to the student as a learner or professional, and that was really the goal of the assignment. So if you didn't get a check mark in the why peer learning has value for students, that's something to really pay attention to in your revision. The next sets were truly optional, and it's interesting to me that in this group, the things that were resonating with you from the modules that you read on Monday were the importance of coaching reviewers and then revision planning as the dominant priorities. Usually in this workshop, people concentrate on the write, review, revise cycles in the small bits, and also on helpful feedback. So just again, consider these as options for ways that you might expand your current blurb or pieces that you might pick up after that first day of introduction on peer learning. In the same way, this negative stuff that students bring to peer learning has to be addressed at some time. Maybe your syllabus blurb or the first talking points are not the moment for that, but they're not going to go away without that conversation. Notice that about half the drafts talked about students' self-doubt or their lack of confidence around giving feedback, and then around 30% addressed the other aspects. So again, think about these as threads you might weave into later parts of your peer review instruction. The star rating question asks you as reviewers to nominate drafts for discussion, and so I'm going to cover the three you chose and also an additional one that I'm picking. For this part of the video, you might want to pause the video and read the draft and then click the video to start again. So this blurb focuses on the benefits of peer review for writers. It talks about social and psychological motivation. It helps writers understand audience. It helps students discover audiences beside the teacher, and then an opportunity for writers to develop um, their problem solving strategies. It's also about building a shared vocabulary for working with writing. So these are all benefits that are about writers getting feedback. This syllabus blurb takes the opposite approach. It focuses on the benefits of giving good feedback and suggests that giving good feedback is at the heart of learning to write. And that's because, according to this writer, feedback teaches students to have a different set of eyes. And that's sort of like reading like a writer, if you're familiar with that language. The second rationale here is that it helps students think about the importance of revision. So, as a peer reviewer, you're looking at a draft, and in order to offer a comment, you actually have to get in the mindset of revision on another person's draft. The heart of peer review is giving useful feedback because it helps writers read their own work more carefully and with some distance. This is actually the core of what we're working on at Eli Review 2. We call it giver's gain. That's Bill Hart Davidson's word for the benefits of giving helpful feedback for priming students to do better revision. So I'll send you a link to that. This third model talks about the mantle of the peer reviewer, and it encourages students not to expect themselves to be expert writers, but to be careful critical readers. The second bullet point encourages them not to offer what I call naked praise. So, not simply, I like this, but to offer clothed praise. I like this because. So that students get a sense of what they're doing well and what they're doing poorly. They're not just labeled as doing it well or poorly. They get a sense of how it works. The third bullet point encourages students to think about reflecting on feedback and how they can benefit from just giving other people feedback by reading other people's work. And so that's another giver's gain thread here. The fourth model pulls on some of the themes we've already talked about, and it calls the reader's ear as the primary organ of peer learning. I like that a lot. And then it offers what I think of as a familiar peer review approach. That is to ask students to think of themselves as peeling the onion. They start at a global level, then they move to a paragraph level, and then they move to a sentence level. We're actually pushing against this kind of approach to peer review on a single sheet because of the cognitive load issue. So instead of offering one review that covers all three levels, we encourage teachers to design reviews at each level. So there might be a draft submitted, and then there would be a review on the global level, and then a review at the paragraph level, and a third review at the sentence level. And this simply helps students not peel the onion of the draft at one time, but to look at each onion peel level at multiple drafts so that they can handle the cognitive load a little bit easier. So as you think about designing peer learning, think about how this onion approach might transform the way you use Eli. Let me summarize where we are. So far, we've processed and debriefed feedback by talking about how the individual report for each writer gives you a sense of what your reviewers think you are doing and how your priorities compare to the rest of the class. We've also looked at some models recommended by the reviewers who read them, and we've talked about how the different approaches might influence the way you revise your work. So now your task as a writer participating in this workshop is to build a revision plan. So I'm going to walk you through that process. Let me show you what a revision plan looks like now. When you go to the dashboard, click on it, and you'll see the instructions that explain how to get comments from the review task to the revision plan. So remember that you have to start in a review task and then work through the comments and choose Add to Revision Plan, and it will get copied to a list. I'm going to switch to the student resources, and I'm going to pull from the user guide and then pick the revision task to walk you through this process. So to build a revision plan, you have to add that comment to a particular writing task, and then you get a note box where you can say how you are going to use that particular feedback in revision. So this is a note for you that I can see as the instructor if you share the plan with me. The next spot is that you also get to drag and drop those comments into a priority list. So you can say, this is the first thing I'm going to do, and this is the fourth thing I'm going to do if you have that many. You also get an additional revision note box, a big box. So in these additional revision notes, this is a space for you to communicate about your overall sense of what needs to change. It's a good place to put any ideas you learned by looking at models or from the explanations in your rating or any overarching reflections you have from the work that you've done this week. Your comment will come directly to me and I'll respond. And my response is going to be focused on coaching you in the thinking you're doing between the draft. So I'm not giving you feedback that's exactly like the feedback you got from peers. That would be a waste of time. Instead, I am commenting on the decisions you've made. I'm going to say, you followed great advice, keep going. Or, I think you ignored some good advice from so and so. Or, I think you followed some bad advice from so and so. Or, nobody told you X, Y, or Z. So, my job as the instructor in coaching this thinking between drafts is to find out the things peers haven't already told you and to help you figure out what to do next before you start down that road of revision. This concludes the video debriefing writing from the peer learning activity. I hope it was helpful for giving you a sense of how you can use Eli's features to make sure that writers have the information they need to make good decisions about revising.